Hey, what's up, guys? Guardian here. We are back, and yeah, it's been a while. I feel like I say this every time, but yeah, this one was quite long because during winter of 2022, I basically kept getting ill over and over again, and motivation with videos just was not there. So I took a break, and basically we got into the new year, and yeah, I felt like coming back, making a video, and who else better to start with than the first overdress deck that I did, which was Bastion. And yeah, I wasn't expecting to update Bastion anytime soon, but some stars aligned basically to the point where I wanted to revisit the deck in real life. And yeah, it's been quite fun to revisit the deck. I think not playing it for so long actually helped me with getting back into the deck. But who knows? Maybe a few months down the line, I might not want to play the deck again. But I am aware that this deck is going to be getting support in set 9, I believe. So we'll probably look into it there. But I do have some of the things from set 7. Still not 100% sold on the ratios right now, just because we did get an unrestriction of a Darkstrain Dragon from the most recent ban list. So yeah, so 4 Darkstrain is pretty cool to have back, and yeah, it changed the deck up a bit since I can't remember or not if Darkstrain was limited as Bastion Prime came out. So I don't think Prime was using 4 Darkstrain, otherwise it might have got limited after Prime came out. But yeah, it's been a while, so we'll go into the deck and we'll go over what I'm playing. So to start with, we of course have the right deck. We are playing the usual suspects with Base as the starter, Fort as the grade 1, Rooks as the grade 2, and of course Bastion being our grade 3. So nothing's really changed here, still sticking to the same old Bastion ride line that we all know and love. And then for the main deck here, we are playing the 4 copies of Bastion Prime, the grade 4 of the deck. Really scary skill to restand all of your grade 3s, as long as you reveal a grade 3 or greater from the drive check, which you do have that triple drive to hopefully get there. You'd actually be surprised sometimes that it can actually not happen, which is very irritating, but you can either go Rearguard, Vanguard, and then if you don't get the restand skill acquired, maybe any triggers that you got, you could dump onto the other Rearguard. That's a safe play you could do. But if you want to go all out and be as aggressive as possible with like 5 attacks, then that could be the line that you might have to take. Of course, you do have to Soul Blast or discard a Bastion for the skill, but obviously the Prime itself does cover that cost, and also the Bastion in your Soul can cover the cost as well. So playing 4 copies of Prime, and then I am still sticking to 2 copies of the normal Bastion, because if you are not riding the Bastion Prime for your turn 4, then at minimum you want to be Persona riding, because it's at least still a good push for the turn. Also, if you don't need these, there are still just fodder for the cost of Prime to activate his skill, so it is what it is. So 2 copies of the normal Bastion. Now, going into the main beat sticks of the deck here, we of course have the 4 copies of Alden, which is still around since set 1, and I don't blame it because it's really stupidly good. In fact, not playing this deck for such a long time, it actually opened my eyes up to how broken Alden is as a card, because it's legit a +2 on a stick that just beats face, and it's just ridiculous. So, you know, when you play some other decks and you struggle with gaining a +1, gaining a +2 of this is just, it's mind-boggling. It really is. But yeah, of course, we're playing 4 copies of him still. He's still arguably the best card in the deck. And then to go alongside him, which I'd say is the second best card, is the 4 copies of Darkstrain Dragon, which I decided to put 4 in the deck because initially I was thinking about doing 3, but I want to see this card as consistently as possible because it is the win con. And with Bastion Prime, this card just explodes your field in terms of power thresholds, and the amount of guard the opponent has to drop in order to block everything is ridiculous. So you could drop it down to 3 if you fancied, but I prefer sticking to the 4 because I still remember the days when I was doing 3 copies and I just wouldn't see it. Especially when you don't see your Aldens and you just don't have the draw power. Um, Sometimes you're just missing pieces, and I would prefer not to miss the Darkstrain, since even before the turn 4, you still kind of want a Darkstrain on your turn 3, as long as you can sustain it, right, for the 2 Soul Blast. So, yeah. So 4 copies of that, and to help with the Soul, because Darkstrain does need 2 Soul, we are playing the 4 copies of Refluke. Now, you can change this for Fossado if you want to. I have seen both builds where it's either this or Fossado. The argument for Fossado is that he sticks on the board, which is relevant for some of the new support in set 7, since they do require you to have multiple grade 3s on the field, so you do need a board presence. Whereas Refluke kind of goes against that because he goes into the soul, so he removes himself. But my argument for Refluke is that he guarantees you the soul charge that you may need for the soul blast of your Darkstrain, which I would prefer to have, because if you're relying on the on hit of Fossado, um, it just takes the agency out of your hands, and it more so relies on the opponent not blocking the attacks, which, if they do, you're kind of screwing yourself. Whereas if you play the Refluke, you can just manually put the card into the soul for the soul blast that you need for the skill. And also, Refluke's pretty nice that he gives one of your reguards power, so it can actually help you with getting over defensives that come up, to make one of your reguards big enough to get over one, basically. So I quite like Refluke, but you can play Fossado if you want, since he does have the resist skill, and that's pretty good right now with the current meta, being very like control based with a lot of retire going around. So you can do that, but obviously Refluke can just go into the soul and dodge that anyway, so it's up to you. Now, another unit that I play is 3 copies of Sperair. I really like Sperair because he's very flexible, and also he's kind of like the backup card that you want to see when you don't see Alden, because if you're not seeing Alden, things are going badly. So you want to see this, so that you can restand it with Bastion and then do the Soul Blast 2 to draw card. Yes, you do Soul Blast 2, and that is going to hinder your soul for Darkstrain, but usually you will have enough soul lingering to get back to the threshold that you need for the 2 Soul Blast needed for Darkstrain for a push turn. And like I said, if you're not seeing Alden, you're having a bad time, and I much prefer spending 2 soul to try dig for pieces to hopefully make the turn 4 a bit better. And outside of that, if you're not using Sperair for the Soul Blast skill for the draw, he's a great booster, because you just put him behind one of your grade 3s, and then he gives 5k passively to the unit in front of him. So he's kind of like a pseudo booster in the deck as well, which I really like with him. So yeah, I decided to play 3 of him, sort of like a backup of Alden, but also a nice booster to go along. And yeah, if you pair this up with your Darkstrain boost for the turn, you are going to get some nasty columns, because yeah, you can hit like 33 and just really big numbers that are awkward to guard. Alright, so next we are going to be taking a look at some of the new cards. So first we're doing 2 copies of Discorder. This guy's pretty cool. So basically when he attacks, if you have 6 or more grade 3 or greater units, so he does work with Bastion Prime of course, you counterblast 1, and then until the end of the battle, this unit's attack will hit regardless of its power if the sum grades of your opponent's guardians is not grade 3 or greater. So this is pretty cool, because if they guard with a bunch of triggers, they're all grade 0s. So that doesn't matter, and you will still hit. Now, there is one workaround in that your opponent can use a perfect guard to nullify this, since the nullify doesn't matter about the power, it will just block the attack from the skill. So that's something to bear in mind, but if they don't have that, they probably used the PG earlier when they were blocking all of your other attacks. So if you've got the 1CB lingering, you can use it on the Discorder to hopefully get an attack in that they just can't deal with, and that could just seal the game up. But I decided to only go for 2 of him because he is very conditional, and he does require you to basically have a board, which I do think he works well in a heavy Darkstrain build. But yeah, I don't think he's worth warranting playing more than 2. I think he's more just a late game win condition that could sometimes come up. But yeah, I think he's a cool support card, so I don't mind playing 2 copies of him. And then the last support card we got, I'm just doing one copy of Hontaria. So Hontaria is kind of what we had to play with before the Darkstrain under restriction, but since Darkstrain's under restricted now, I kind of didn't know what to do with this card, so I just stuck it in as a one-off for now. But what I might do in the future is I might take out one copy of Spare to put in maybe a second copy of this, because then I would have two of these with the 4 Darkstrain as like the boosters of the deck. And then this is kind of like a booster and a mini Alden at the same time, because you place it, as long as you have a Bastion Vanguard, you can counterblast, call a grade 3 from your hand, and then if you have 5 or more units, you draw a card. So you don't need a full board necessarily, since it does count your Vanguard. So you just need 5 units in total, and it also gives you a way to draw a card if you don't have the 2 CB needed for Alden's skill, which I do think is quite good. So it can be a backup alternative. So I think that's what I'll do in the future, is that I will probably bump this up to 2 and take out 1 Spare probably. But outside of that, during your turn, if you have 6 or more units, it gets boost. So I guess it's a backup boost alternative if you don't have the 2 soul for Darkstrain, which can sometimes come up. But yeah, it's an awkward place, but I'm playing 1 for now, but I'm probably going to bump it up to 2 in the future. So just bear that in mind. And then for the final grade 3 of the deck, I'm doing 2 copies of the Embrace Dragon. I really love this card because it just gives you some shield value for the early game from your grade 2 turn onwards, which is pretty necessary, I would say, in a deck like Bastion, since most of the deck is high grades and no shield, so this does come in clutch. But I did have to cut this down to 2 because I was playing more before, just because of the nature of this deck requiring more bodies to like place down. And you really don't want to be placing Embrace Dragon because it makes really awkward numbers, especially with the 2k of Bastion Prime. You're going to be that 1k short, and it's going to be really annoying. Trust me. Came up a lot when I was doing it in D-Days, but yeah, even after altering the deck with the modern support that we've got outside of D-Days, I did want to cut down on that card to make room for some more beat sticks, basically. And then the only grade 1 that we're playing is basically the PG. Now do note with this, because you are a grade 4 deck, you cannot use the Blitz Order PG, because that only works with grade 3 or lower, which I had to remind myself very briefly, because I almost made that mistake. But that's a cool thing, right? Is that I can make the mistake, realize it, and then be like, oh yeah, don't do that, by the way. So yeah, the 4 regular PG, just so we can preserve the hand size and block attacks, obviously. And then for the triggers, of course, we have the over trigger, which is busted in this deck because all of your regards will be twin driving. So yeah, good times when you see this. And then we are doing 8 crit with the 4 Gurgant and the 4 Blade Feather Dragon. So just a standard lineup there of criticals, since we have the power anywhere with the deck. So the crits just help us seal the game. And then I'm doing 3 draw to help us get more pieces and more bodies to the field. And then the 4 heal trigger to heal and survive and prolong the game. So yeah, you can play some of the effect heals if you want to, but I always like using the generic ones, and then you can adapt the deck to your local or meta scene, depending on what you want more of. But yeah, that is up to you. But yeah, that is it for the deck. So Bastion Prime, he is still live and kicking, and honestly, the deck still performs well. It's actually surprising the amount of cards in this deck that I had beforehand, from like ages ago, that are still relevant now. You know, look at a card like Alden, for example, but they do give the deck some small pieces of support here and there to help it out, like the Discorder and stuff, which I do think is cool. Be interesting to see what the deck will look like when set 9 comes out with the new support, and yeah, I'll look into it when it comes out. And yeah, stay tuned to the channel. I might profile some other decks coming up soon at some point. I'm waiting for a promo to arrive for Hexorb, so I'm hoping to profile Hexorb at some point on the channel, since a lot of you guys seem to like watching Hexorb. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys in the next one. So this is Guardian 205, signing out.